Greetings all, this is Hairy Nick. How is everyone out there going? We've got a new article on some of the new X-Wing pods coming out in the Hot Shots 8 pack. Hopefully sometimes next month. We're still a bit hazy on the details of all of that. Also, just before we dive into this, we do have confirmation that we're going to get our points released on a stream from FFG on the 9th of January, so stay tuned. We'll make sure to cover all of that in the channel as well as some new information about something else very soon as well. So a lot of X-Wing stuff to talk about very, very soon. In the meantime, let's have a look at this article and what we have here. So we have an article about what FFG have described the villains of X-Wing, which I resent as a Scum player. Look, we have the Empire and First Order. I understand that. They are very much the bad guys in Star Wars, but come on. Let's be honest, Scum are the true heroes of this game, and I think it is very unfair to lump them in with this article. I know they've got to make an article of like 2 factions and 3 factions and 2 factions, but surely the Scum alongside the heroes would have made way more sense. Come on, FFG, this is not reasonable. But look, all thinly veiled jokes aside, let's have a look at the first of these factions, the First Order. Why not? We had 2 of these pilots revealed just recently, Captain Phasma on the TIE SF. We've got this really cool high risk, high reward, self-damaging kind of tactic going on to this faction, which I think is really cool in terms of faction identity. We have Rush on the TIE Silencer, who is Initiative 6 while they're damaged, which is really, really cool. Something that actively rewards you for being damaged rather than being not damaged. So kind of like the exact opposite to a card like Null. But honestly, in terms of faction identity, I think Rush makes a lot more sense. We've spoken about this card already on the channel, and a lot of the response I got from that was, hey, we don't know the points yet, so we mustn't make any assumptions about this kind of stuff. Might be relatively expensive. And look, I just want to say the comments I made about that were pretty much going on the assumption that this is going to be costed like an Initiative 2 silencer with a pilot ability. And if it sort of gets into that nice comfortable points range where, yes, it is significantly less than a card like Kylo Ren, it's going to be very interesting. It's going to be a great filler option for the faction. Now, what was new in this article was this pilot here, Lieutenant LeHuse, or LeHuse, as I'm going to refer to him from now on. Initiative 5, which is actually unique for the TIE SF. We only have Initiative 4 and 6 before this. While you perform an attack, you may spend another friendly ship lock on the defender to re-roll any number of your results. I like the way this has been worded because we could have had the whole thing where it says, oh, you can spend a friendly ship's lock for the regular effect of modifying your dice during the attack step. But what this wording allows us to do is a couple of things. First of all, you can use it for that regular function. You can't use it to launch the missiles on this platform, but you can use it as well as his lock if you're going to fire a missile. So Lieutenant LeHuse could spend their own lock to fire a missile and then a friendly ship's lock to re-roll dice off of it. Now, I don't know if that's necessarily brilliant, but if you have something like Concussion Missile, you do up the odds of hitting with a card like that, which has a lot of potential upside. So I think it's something worth experimenting with. As is, I want to say, it's a decent pilot ability, even without any extra help. You can get multiple attacks if you use the TIE SF Gunner card, which means there is a lot more opportunity to use your friendly ship's target locks. Even if you're doing 2 different attacks, you could use their own target lock as well as another friendly ship's target lock. It's not beyond the realms of possibility. So that's a very interesting pilot ability. Nothing that really sort of jumps out at me as being busted or broken, but I do like this idea of using concussion missiles, so I think some further experimentation will be needed on that. Moving on to the villainous Empire, let's have a look at Vagabond on the TIE Striker. Initiative 2, after you fully execute a maneuver using your adaptive ailerons, if you're not stressed, you may drop 1 device. And just a reminder, adaptive ailerons, before you reveal your dial, if you are not stressed, you must execute a 1 straight or bank in either direction maneuver. So basically what this allows Vagabond to do is to drop 2 devices potentially, which is really, really cool. But in the article, we have this image here where he's dropping 2 proximity mines, which certainly is very powerful in your kind of magical Christmas land scenario. Look, I just want to say it's decent that you can do this and you have the choice of doing it either for its original purpose, as in you drop it during the system phase, or after an adaptive ailerons maneuver. It seems like a great option to be able to do either of those things, and in some rare cases, even both. So I do like this a lot. The TIE Striker hasn't really proven itself as a bomber in terms of meta play right now. So this is a cool, interesting design. I don't know if it's necessarily powerful. We just haven't seen many bombing tactics take off on the Empire just yet. But Initiative 2 might be pretty effectively costed. So it might even be worth looking at in a tactic where you have actually a decent amount of ships and you really want to limit the way your opponent moves around. Also, in the Decimator, we have Monarchy at Initiative 4. During the end phase, you may spend 1 charge to flip one of your reinforced tokens to your other full arc instead of removing it. And I don't hate this design. I think it's very interesting. It certainly seems like it can be very powerful in the right scenario. What I will say about this is we already have Rear Admiral Shenru and Captain Oiken, and these are very exciting designs. Monarchy doesn't really have that really splashy, exciting feel that those pilots have. And look, honestly, maybe for the Decimator, that's actually a good thing. Maybe just raw power is really what the platform needs a bit more of. We're seeing a bit of meta play from Rear Admiral Shenru, but I don't hate the idea of having a ship that can essentially retain its reinforced tokens. What I'll say with Monarchy is I feel like forcing you to flip the reinforced token is what makes me unexcited about this. If you were able to keep it on either side, I don't think that would be overstepping the power level, as long as it's costed correctly. Forcing you to flip does sort of make it so you do have to really hamper the way you fly. Maybe you're left with a few less choices, and more to the point, you are sort of telegraphing the way you're going to fly your Decimator, which seems a lot less exciting. If you were able to, say, just reinforce the front and keep the front reinforced for the next turn, which then allows you to take a second token, so like you could reinforce the front and then target lock on your next turn, just being able to slow roll the platform in might have been a lot more interesting. But as it stands, if the Decimator is chasing something, it's going to reinforce the front so it doesn't get shot backwards, but oh no, then it has to reinforce the back the next turn. It does feel a bit restrictive, and on top of that, it only works 3 times. I mean, it's worse off than having 1 charge that recurs. I don't know, I really feel like FFG could have pushed this one a bit more and potentially could have made it in sort of the same realms as Rear Admiral Shenru and Captain Oiken. As it stands, it's the least exciting unique Decimator pilot to me. Doesn't mean she's going to be the worst. She may actually turn out to be the best in terms of raw power level. It's just, I guess the creative part of my brain really wanted a bit more out of this pilot. I've talked about this platform before. I was really hoping it would get something a bit more different and exciting. All right, the last Empire ship we have here is Fifth Brother for the TIE Advanced V1. Initiative 4. While you perform an attack after the neutralize result step, if the attack hit, you may spend 2 force to add a critical result, and he comes with 2 force tokens that recur every turn. Now, FFG pointed out in this article, this does work with homing missile. Because of the way homing missile is worded, it talks about skipping the defense and attack die step. You do not skip the compare result step, and the attack still hit. So that does indeed work with Fifth Brother, which is kind of cool. It's an easy way to dump out a lot of damage. I don't really know if you really want to go for something like that. I mean, it depends on how much it costs. But it might just simply be a thing of you just want to run this as is. I think Hate is a very interesting card to put on this. Again, if the points work out. Being able to quickly recharge this ability and get it online multiple turns in a row seems like a very devastating thing to do potentially, again, in the right situation. But look, adding on crits onto attacks that already hit is no joke. Just bear in mind, it's only got 2 red dice as a primary attack, so it's not something you're guaranteed to always hit with, and it's not going to feel great when you don't, because essentially in that situation you don't have a pilot ability. But potentially very powerful nonetheless. Okay, let's move over to the Scum faction. I have way too much to talk about here. Let's start off again with the pilot we already had revealed, Bosk, Initiative 4 on the Z95 Headhunter. While you perform a primary attack after the neutralize result step, you may spend 1 critical result to add 2 hits. And it also has the baked-in ability Pursuit Craft. After you deploy, you may acquire a lock on the ship a friendly houndstooth has locked, which I think is a nice bit of upside. It does mean that Bosk can't also be in the pilot seat of the houndstooth. That doesn't quite work out. You can make Bosk be in both seats if you use the Nashtar Pup pilot card, but it also means you can't have both platforms on the table at the same time. This is really, really interesting because basically you have a way of utilising the Houndstooth that doesn't require you to just deploy your ship after it gets destroyed. And you got to remember, when the Houndstooth was originally designed in X-Wing First Edition, it was one of FFG's first attempts at doing that kind of design. So now we have a situation where you can just dock and deploy during the game as you please. You don't have to actually have your ship be destroyed to do that. And having this kind of ability is a lot of fun. It means you can easily use Bosk with like concussion missile, even cluster missiles, and that gives you a much higher chance of also getting those crits across the table. It doesn't seem busted or anything. I mean, at the end of the day, it's a Z95 Headhunter. It's just not a great platform. I was really, really hoping with the reveal of this pack that FFG would do something a little bit more with this platform. The Scum and Villainy faction has lots of different pilots using this, and a lot of the Star Wars lore talks about how they modified their Z95 Headhunters. So right now the only unique ship ability we have for this is it can get a lock that the Houndstooth has, which is fun, but at the same time there's no titles or configurations. I just kind of wish FFG did a bit more with this platform. Cool idea nonetheless. Looks like a lot of fun potentially with Moralo Eval, especially with all that extra positioning abilities. Could lead to some spicy gameplay. Okay, let's move over to this pilot here. We have a droid in the Skik Fighter, Initiative 0, G4R, GOR, V, or M, one of those. After you defend, each other ship at range 0 suffers 1 critical damage. That's really, really weird. It looks like FFG, whenever I see them make new pilots for the Skik Fighter, it's like they're always pushing it in weird different directions. And then using the Skik Fighter as a blocker specifically actually feels okay. It's Initiative 0, so it is like primed to be a blocker. Also, it's a droid, so it works alongside RG-88A. Maybe that list is finally going to go somewhere, fingers crossed. With this Guri, Forlom, RG-88A, maybe a list is slowly forming in the ether, perhaps. I don't know, could be fun. I don't know if it's enough payoff to make that kind of list work really well, but at least at this point in time, we have a new droid on the Scum faction that is going to be at a very different point cost. It'll definitely be the cheapest one we have anyway, which is kind of cool. I like this ability a lot. I think a lot of people are going to be tempted to put on Intimidation on this, if indeed it has a talent slot. Not guaranteed in Initiative 0, but stranger things have happened. Even like missiles and stuff. Unfortunately, Weapon Hardpoint doesn't allow you to put bombs on, so you can't do like proton bombs, which I think would be a big temptation. And look, if the Skik Fighter ever gets illicits, I just know people are going to want to run a Dead Man Switch on it. But all that said, even though we can't see the points, I think this is going to function the best with no upgrades. Don't be tempted, guys. It'll be fine without. Just a nice solid blocker at a nice cheap cost. Could be very interesting. In terms of that sort of low points cost on the Scum faction, we've already got the Mining Guild tie, so I don't know where this is going to sit, but it's an interesting design and it's a new fresh take on the Skik, which feels really, really good. And the last but not least, we have Nom Lum on the Jumpmaster 5000. Oh, this poor platform. Initiative 1. After you become the defender, if the attacker is not in your firing arc, you must rotate your turret indicator to a standard arc the attacker is in. So before we move on, that means if the attacker is overlapping 2 of your arcs, or in the case of an epic ship, maybe even 3, you then get to choose, which is quite nice. I really like this ability, and I like this design on the Jumpmaster in general. It feels like the design of the other 3 ships, as in Tel Travura, Manaru, and Dengar, is very much leaning into what the Jumpmaster was doing in First Edition. The one exception is sort of Dengar. He had a little bit of success in Second Edition, but the other 2 are just really awkward with the way they work. And this is about getting that firing arc moving. The Jumpmaster's always been a very difficult thing to evaluate in Second Edition. My attitude towards it has been, look, yeah, that arc is so annoying to use. Basically treat it as a ship with a forward-facing firing arc with a little bit of upside on top of that. And if you sort of evaluate it that way, it makes a lot more sense. Now, this is Initiative 1 pilot, but it does basically mean every time it gets shot, it is guaranteed to shoot back, which is really, really good for this platform. It's only a 2 red dice primary, but guaranteeing shots is a really, really big deal. The caveat to that is, yes, your opponent can choose not to shoot Nom Lum and shoot other ships, so I suppose you ideally don't want to empower your opponent to do that. Maybe make sure Nom Lum is predominantly flown in 2 or 3 ship lists, so you are less likely to give your opponent that kind of option. Also, there's the concept of making Nom Lum a more tantalizing target by giving them something like a proton torpedo or something similar like that. And that's a bit of a weird concept because obviously this ability doesn't help you with torpedoes at all. But torpedoes can be always fired out the front regardless. And because Nom's action economy isn't being taxed by rotating the turret, it leaves your ship free to do target locks. It's an interesting concept, something I'd like to play around with. The article also talks about including Dengar as well, meaning you have yet another bonus every time your ship is shot. I don't always love that kind of tactic because it means if your opponent again chooses not to shoot Nom Lum, well, you basically don't have a pilot ability or an upgrade card ability. Yay, value lost, which is never good. But overall, I think this is very interesting. I think the consistency is something you really can't ignore. I will say Initiative 1 large base ships are so awkward. I just don't really know what kind of shell this is going to fit into. I think, again, a 3-ship list, if something kind of works in some kind of combination like that, it ultimately remains to be seen, but once again, it's a nice new refreshing design, which at the very least might encourage some new design in our list building, and I think at the end of the day, that is the most important thing. Anyway, that's all the new information we have for today. Thank you all so much for watching. As I said, stay tuned. Lots more information to come out about this game over the next week, so expect to see all of that here on the channel. In the meantime, do not forget to like and subscribe. Like me on Facebook, follow me on Twitter and Reddit. Also, please consider supporting my Patreon as well, and a huge shout out to all of my patrons who are currently on my Discord chatting away about all this kind of stuff. When this article dropped, I was actually at work and I've actually been working for the past couple of days, so I had very little time to actually sit down and go through this. Having all of that conversation on my own private forum was such a useful resource, so thank you so much to everyone that was involved with that, and thank you to the rest of the people that are also involved with the Patreon. You guys are absolutely awesome. I'll catch you all in the next video.